Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This is questions and answers number 30. You guys ask me excellent questions based on the podcasts that I do here at Astral Club, and I muddle through trying my best to answer them. Before we get started, Patreon. If you'd like to support Astral Club on Patreon, you get videos with no commercials, email where we can talk back and forth, as well as advanced videos on Sunday. The link will be in the description. If you're interested in private astral projection lessons to learn to astral project or just increase the frequency and quality of your projections, I'd be glad to help you out. And you will find an email in the description where you can get some more information. Let's get started here. Number 1, we start with the Galactic Peace Conference. This is where I attended the quote-unquote Galactic Peace Conference that the master had called supposedly to discuss some sort of compromise peace to settle the war that was going on. Lightning round number 1. Ask, do the Greys have a powerful military? Most definitely. They are quite famous throughout the galaxy for having a very capable military. Now, based on what I know about their population size, they don't have huge numbers as part of their military. A lot of their craft are controlled by artificial intelligence, which just may answer the question that many observers, military, civilian, and others have posed about the performance of craft that is within our environment, within our within the Earth environment where there's gravity. These craft often take off at unbelievable speeds. They make right angle turns at a high speed. The types of maneuvers that would liquefy a biological being. Now, perhaps the craft themselves have some sort of an anti-grav situation where that would allow them to do this type of aerial acrobatics. But I know the Greys use a lot of artificial intelligence to run many of their crafts. So you know, if an artificial intelligence is running or piloting rather a spacecraft near Earth's surface, well, they're not going to be affected by right angle turns at high speed, not like a biological organism. So, at any rate, the Greys do have a powerful military, though it is well respected. Number 2, Pip Lord. Can a being of high vibration, like Gulam or the Master, still be capable of doing evil? This is a question that I get on a regular basis. I think people are of the assumption that when a being gets more intelligent and more powerful, that it always develops an orientation towards serving others. Most of the time, that is true. However, there is a significant minority that decides to serve themselves. And I prefer service to self and service to others to the more generic terms of good and evil, simply because good and evil have meant so many different things, so many different places in the world, at a wide variety of times. So I prefer the service to self, service to others. In the law of one, both orientations can potentially take you to the final enlightenment. Now, it's said that service to others is a surer path to that type of enlightenment stage. But it is possible to achieve enlightenment by serving self, with the knowledge that by serving self, you're also serving others. Because if we are all one, then no matter what you do, you're helping out others. The only difference is in service to self, there's an intermediary step, where you're serving yourself, then there's kind of a trickle down effect. But the short answer is yes. I mean, there just because a being is more intelligent and powerful does not mean that 100% of the time it's going to suddenly become a service to others or quote unquote good being. Number 3, JP. Do you think there are leaders on our planet that are controlled by the master? I don't think controlled is the exact word that we should be using here. He's not controlling anyone. Now, what he could do, or can, depending on when you're listening to this, is influence beings that are of a certain orientation of service to self. He can, in essence, whisper in their ear. He can manipulate their dreams to a point where he is encouraging them to act in a way that will be beneficial for himself. Now, of course, he would cloak that in ways that it would seem that it is more beneficial to the individual Earth leader. But yes, most definitely, there's a number of leaders that have been influenced in some way or other by the master. But they still have free will. Just because you have certain dreams, just because you're hearing metaphorical voices in your head, doesn't mean you have to listen to them. Doesn't mean you have to obey them. If you have a strong conscience and a service to others orientation, you can resist that type of influence. Next up, in the Humanity and Astral Projection podcast, I had asked you guys to give me a lot of your information about your ethnicity and whether you've projected, whether your family has projected, trying to figure out whether there's certain, ethnicities that are more likely to project than others. And the second question is, what about families? Does astral projection perhaps run in families? Well, the first answer to my question seems to be that just about every nation on Earth, every people on Earth has astral projected. And, I've got a long list here of folks, for instance. V. Andrews has Tartar blood in her, and she projects, as does her family. Curioso is an African American. His family has had experiences as well. Thundora 1, African American, and she's projected. She also talked about spiritual leaders who channel spirits and gods in Africa. And I believe it was that belief system that came to the New World that has translated itself into what we call voodooing. Plectrum Dust is a Filipino. Alan Lee is Han Chinese, and he believes some family members might have those experiences as well. Amr Profs, Profps, is Persian, and his family has projected. Megan Padberg, Irish. Harry Kanger, Estonian. Slow Regine, Somalian. Nix, English, German, Italian, just like me. Rob Stein, Bach, German and Irish. Joja Bojo, Kurd, some family. Ralph Rodriguez, Cuban and Puerto Rican. Clement Lumumba, he's Kenyan. And he also told me that he can't run for crap. That's not the word he used, but that's what he was talking about. I thought that was funny. Because if you remember, I talked about in one of my examples when I was talking about the genetic component that, for instance, Kenyans that grew up in the Rift Valley area have disproportionately done very well in long distance running in Olympic Games. Navy Blue 3 is Indian, as in from the Indian subcontinent, family as well. and Michael H., who is an Ashkenazi Jew. He says he's still working on astral projection, but Jesus was a Jew, and he could do some fancy stuff. I laughed. I laughed at that. That was pretty funny to me. So I just want to thank you guys. That was an excellent return. Number two, we were talking about ethnicities and whether astral projection is widespread, and it seems to be very widespread. Number two, it also seems to run in families because astral projection is still a fairly rare talent when you're discussing the human pool. There seems to be, at least from this unscientific survey, a large percentage of family members that also have psychic experiences and or astral project. And I believe that you'd find, if you did a scientific study of 1,000 or more people and had control groups and all that other stuff, I think you'd find that people who project have a disproportionately larger percentage of family members who've had similar capabilities. So the human family projects, but certain individual members of that human family, and it seems to have nothing to do with ethnicity, because we all do it, but their families seem to have a higher incidence, which I find very interesting. Next up, we have the Future Crocodile Temple episode. This is where I went to around the year 12,000, which is about 2,000 years, 10,000 years into the future. And I beheld this crocodile temple with a little town around it with slaves and this priesthood that's been built up seemingly to worship some sort of crocodile gods. Number 5, Curse of Ymir 13. Ask, do you have any theories, Ray, your far future trips to the year 12,000 to 15,000? For instance, my tribe in the year 15,000, I guess what he wanted to know was, do I have any theories why my far future trips have led me to seemingly less advanced worlds than what we have right now? My tribe in 15,000 CE or AD, whatever you want to say, had legends that the ancient world of the gods had been destroyed in a single day and night because of their arrogance and greed. Now, naturally, it's a legend, and you never quite know what to say about legends. We have legends of such a world destruction. We have numerous legends all around the world of large floods and other earthquakes, fireballs, all kinds of tales of destruction. And Atlantis is certainly one of those legends. So it certainly does. We certainly do have plenty of them. So it seems that there was some sort of catastrophe that came on very quickly in that possible future that led to a seemingly less advanced far future. Unfortunately, I don't have any further details on exactly what happened. Number 6. Henrik Adamian. What happened to the Greys planet after the Galactic Conference broke up? You may recall that the Master had betrayed the noble spirit of the Galactic Peace Conference, where all parties, including the militaries, were supposed to come and attend as a gesture of good faith. He had sent an army to the Greys planet to do a sneak attack and try to take out their support system on the Greys planet. I had luckily warned the Greys and given them advice to hold back a substantial part of their military while sending another portion to the peace conference. Because they did that, when the forces of the Master showed up, the Greys wiped them out, and the planet itself had very little damage to it. Number 7, Jameek Jackson. When you get a physical appearing body in the future, how does it feel? Uh, as one goes into the future, generally at least 100 years or more into a possible future, in many cases, not all, but in many, one gains a type of body that appears physical but is not, and can be seen by those who are alive in the physical at that time, and you can interact with them. You have the ability of telepathy to communicate. You can't actually speak because you don't really have the physical apparatus, but you can communicate using telepathy back and forth. You can have basic feelings, but I don't know whether it's because we have in our minds what a breeze feels like. So if you see a breeze and I feel it in my future astral body, is it because I'm associating previous memories with it, or am I somehow feeling it for real? I don't know. I once discussed this, and I even gave an example about I'd like everyone now to imagine cutting a lemon, and what does it smell like? And I'll bet you, especially those who are good at visualizations, that if you think about cutting a lemon, you can almost smell that lemon because it's such a pungent, memorable odor rather, and you have it in your mind, so you could almost summon it up now, even as I'm talking, and smell that lemon. So that might perhaps explain why I could say feel a breeze in the astral, in the far future. One thing I can tell you though is that your body, even though it's seen by physical people, is not physical. You can't be injured. You can't bleed. So you're just an astral body that now can be seen and interact. But that's pretty much the extent of it. Number 8, Chris A. Chris basically wanted to know, based on my experience, how far into the possible future can I be seen and interact with physical people? Well, kind of like I mentioned, you have to go at least 100 years or so into the future, I've noticed. And the further you go into the possible futures, the more utilitarian, the more solid the body seems to be. And as you go into the future, you can also spend more time there while only seconds pass in the present. So, far future trips, like when I visited my tribe, I was there for years. Yet when I returned to my body, no more than 20 minutes had gone by in the present. Now, there was one particular dimension where I traveled about 150 years in the future to a future medical center that was extremely high tech. I was a spirit at that point, and nobody could see me. So, I suspect there's different rules for some different dimensions. But in general, in the majority of my future trips, when I'm 100 or more years in the future, I generally can be seen by physical people. However, I normally try to keep a low profile, stay out of people's sight as much as possible. I usually don't like to interfere, although I have done so on a number of occasions. But I usually try to keep a low profile and not interact. So, number 9, Miles Nuages ask, are there any incidences that would make you think it's actually someone from the distant past that astral projected to their future, which is our present? Did you get that? It's a little, it's a little confusing, but then again, future travel can be nuts. What he's saying is it possible that let's say, Plato from 2200 or so years ago, if he could astral project and he projected to us here today, would we be able to see him? And I would think that yes, there probably would be a pretty good chance that we could if he actively showed himself. So why don't we hear about these things? Well, we have. I mean, there are numerous stories in all cultures of weird individuals who popped up dressed curiously, who were mistaken as fairies or elves or magical creatures and wizards. We have numerous tales of these types of incidents. So I suspect it has happened. And now, if they're like me, a lot of them probably just kept a low profile and didn't, want to announce themselves. And just looked around. But I think still a fairly rare phenomena. But we have tales all over the world of curious folks showing up in curious ways and then disappearing again. So I think that's worth noting there. Number 10, Elisendo24 commented, "It makes me sad to listen to this story." And then he quoted the famous Einstein quote, "I do not know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." Once again, I don't know whether it was a war in this possible future that wiped out our modern civilization. All I have is a vague legend so far to go on. I mean, for all I know, maybe it was a big asteroid that hit. I mean, who knows? It's really impossible to get any kind of details. But the quote itself is a very sobering quote. Number 11, Luis Gabriel. "Would it be possible for you to willingly visit an alternative future where modern human civilization wasn't wiped out?" Well, if you recall, in one of my space episodes, I did project to a future where humans had a base on a planet that is not in our current solar system. So there is at least one possible future where we could proceed into space. However, I can't willingly, for the first time, go somewhere that I want to see. I mean, what I do is I pick a year and then I will myself there. I may end up in a variety of different dimensions, but unless I've been there before, I don't have the ident. So really, I'm rolling dice. I'm picking one card out of a deck. Who knows? It's impossible to know. All I can do is project to a year and then report what I see back. That's all I can do. I mean, if you have a lucid dream, you can will yourself to see whatever you like. But in astral projection, it doesn't quite work that way. Kip Road commented, "Maybe your actions with the priests caused the Crocodile Temple to be abandoned." See, my first trip quite a while back, I went and I found this abandoned Crocodile Temple and the ruins of this mud brick type town in this very tropical type area in the United States, near where today we're talking about the southernmost end of Arkansas, roughly. There was a sea that had come in. And I found this abandoned Crocodile Temple, and that's all I knew about it before I got pulled back to my body. I went back before that happened, maybe a couple hundred years, as much, it's kind of vague. I just wanted to get there before. And that's when I saw this town being built, and I saw this temple just being built as well. And apparently they were worshiping these crocodiles and doing human sacrifice of all things. I got upset and I attacked the priests. I tried to stop the human sacrifice, but unfortunately I was too late. But because of the havoc that I wrought, the slaves took off, and it's very possible that I appeared as some sort of an avenging god, which would have caused a bunch of superstitious people to abandon their gods and their temple. Ordinarily, I don't like to interfere, but if you're dealing with a society that keeps slaves and does human sacrifice, then I am less upset that I interfered with their civilization. Come on, humanity, we can do better than that. Number 13, Signum Aeternus. I wonder how many times human civilizations have hit the reset button. I suspect more than we know. We have numerous legends once again of Lemuria, of Atlantis. We, our geologists, or not geologists, but our archaeologists, are constantly unearthing various artifacts that indicate civilization being older than we thought. I also suspect that a lot of proof of past civilizations may be lying at the bottom of our current oceans. Keep in mind that in our civilization, if you take a look at a globe, you'll see that the majority of the population of Earth exists within about 100 miles of the coastland. Living on a coast is a very favorable way for humans to exist. And I suspect it was no different in the ancient past. The problem with that, from an archaeological standpoint, is that as sea levels rose, many of these ancient civilizations would have been covered by those floodwaters, essentially making discovery by our typical archaeologists virtually impossible. Underwater archaeology, when you're dealing with hundreds of feet that you have to dive before you can start doing a dig, is a whole nother level of complexity versus doing it even in a desert where it's very hot and there's little water. So I suspect there's a lot of proof of ancient human civilizations that is now lying somewhere, underneath the silt of some coastline. Number 14, Pabrodi. If you were the military leader of your tribe, we're going now to around 15,000 CE or AD. I guess this whole trip brought up my future travels. Anyway, if you were the military leader of your tribe in 15,000 CE and had to fight other tribes, what would you do with captured enemies? Unfortunately, when I first joined my tribe, they were beaten unmercifully by neighboring tribes. Their crops were stolen, raided, burned. Women were stolen from the tribe. The men were killed. They were being driven off their land when I found them. I had no choice after I got to know them but to help them defend themselves. They were a peaceful people, probably too peaceful, because they weren't very good at defending themselves. I taught them some of the skills that they could use to defend themselves, basic military tactics, ambushes, how to set up an ambush, how to dig, punji type traps to stop the raiding of the villages. You might say these things were rather negative, but my tribe was on the verge of being wiped out. I couldn't just stand by and allow a peaceful tribe to be wiped out. So I had to do what I had to do. Normally, we were only attacked a number of times by some of the different tribes in the area. But when they saw me flying and participating in the attack, the vast majority of them ran for the hills. They're very superstitious in that future. So luckily, most of the enemies were frightened off very soon after encountering myself and my people. If they surrendered, we took them captive, and then we negotiated to trade them for horses or food or other, medicine baskets, things like that. Unfortunately, if they wouldn't flee and they wouldn't surrender, we had to treat them very harshly. There's no POW camps, there's no prisons in that future. It's a very subsistence way to live. So there's just no Geneva Convention or provision like that. And unfortunately, if they wouldn't surrender and they wouldn't retreat or flee, we had to deal with them very severely. Number 15, Robin. What makes a timeline manifest? Is the future set in stone? Well, the future is not set in stone. The future is plastic. We, as humans, have power over how we're going to mold the future. And that's how we manifest the timeline. You manifest your own timeline individually. You manifest a timeline with your family, but you also manifest a timeline as a nation and as a human race. And that's up to us. I see possible futures, and they're not engraved in stone. Number 16, Michael H. You mentioned using will, all in caps, to control your astral projections. Can that fixed will help you in your physical life? Most definitely. Now, I mentioned that the physical body is controlled by your will, but your brain transmits various signals through the nerves to the muscles, supported by your skeleton, and that's how you control a physical body. However, when you're in the astral, you don't have a physical brain, nerves, muscle, or skeleton. All you have is a pure, fixed, undiluted, undisturbed, non multitasking will. So when you're flying about and you see a place you want to go, a mountain, let's say, you fix it in your will and you will yourself there in a very pure sense, allowing no extraneous thoughts to intrude. That skill can be very valuable in the physical. Now, I know in my military training helped me to develop my will. And in the military, you've got a structure which is different from the civilian life in that you don't typically issue orders in civilian life, but you do in military life. You have to have a very firm grasp on what the goal of the mission is, and then you have to project that will onto your subordinates so that the mission is accomplished. And in the military, nothing is more important than the accomplishment of the mission. Even in civilian life, it's been of use to me. Individually, if I'm working on a particular project, I can fix my will on getting it done and not allowing any impediments to stop me. If I have those working with me or for me, then it's just as simple as sitting them down, finding out exactly what their concerns are, what they need to get the job done, and then I simply ask them to, I know you've got these 10 different things to do, however, this particular mission goal, this particular activity, this particular account needs to be your focus for this week. And I expect, knowing your ability level, that you can get that done. So please get working on that for us. And that's it. That's really all it takes. It just takes a basic understanding that will is what controls everything in the astral and also the physical. And if we allow our will to become weakened, then that's when we run into impediments constantly, both with ourselves and with others. Okay, guys, that's more than enough for one episode. I went longer than I expected to go, but I wanted to get those questions, because they were great questions, out of the way. If you liked this video, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, hit that bell. Questions and comments, I love them. Keep them coming. And don't be afraid to put questions that you have in this question podcast. Because I love that stuff, and it helps everyone. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.